What if the true guardians of humanity's most sacred wisdom were never kings, nor prophets, nor priests, but women? And what if their legacy was deliberately erased from history? Across the ancient world, beneath the stone halls of temples, and behind the veils of secrecy, women once held spiritual authority, so profound that it threatened the power structures of their time. They were not assistants to the sacred, they were the sacred. They presided over mystery rites, initiated seekers into the divine, and served as living embodiments of cosmic law. Yet their story has been buried under centuries of silence. In this video, we'll journey into the forgotten past, where priestesses walked as oracles, midwives of spirit, and keepers of divine gnosis. We'll uncover why their roles were hidden, what knowledge they truly held, and how this ancient feminine wisdom can still transform us today. Prepare to remember what the world was made to forget. Long before patriarchal systems dominated the sacred domain, the spiritual epicenters of ancient civilizations often revolved around the feminine principle, not merely as a symbol, but as an embodied presence. From Isis in Egypt to the Delphic priestesses of Greece, women were not passive devotees. They were conduits of divine energy, gatekeepers of the unseen, and vital initiators in the path of spiritual transformation. In ancient Egypt, the priestesses of Isis held the mysteries of life, death, and rebirth. It was believed that only those initiated through their rites could understand the hidden workings of the universe. In Sumeria, women served as Entu priestesses, chosen not just for devotion, but for their capacity to channel cosmic forces through trance, dream, and sacred sexuality. Meanwhile, in pre-Hellenic Greece, the most revered spiritual guides were the Pythias female oracles at Delphi, who spoke the will of Apollo through ecstatic states that defied explanation. What united all these sacred traditions was the understanding that the feminine was not subordinate to the divine. It was the divine. The female body was seen as an instrument of spiritual power, its cycles mirroring the movements of the moon and stars, its voice capable of summoning visions and prophecy. These women were trained in sacred geometry, alchemy, breathwork, and dream incubation sciences we now associate with secret societies and mystery schools. And they passed their knowledge through whispers, symbols, and rituals, not to dominate, but to awaken. So why were they erased? As empires rose and monotheistic structures gained dominance, the balance shifted. The mystery schools that once revered the feminine were shut down, their texts burned, their priestesses branded as heretics or witches. But fragments of their teachings remained hidden in myth, cloaked in allegory, waiting to be rediscovered. To understand the depth of what was lost, we must explore what these women actually practiced and embodied within the mystery schools. Unlike modern education, ancient initiations weren't designed to inform, they were meant to transform. Priestesses guided initiates through carefully choreographed rituals that simulated death, rebirth, and union with the divine. These rites weren't metaphorical, they were experiential blueprints for awakening higher consciousness. And the priestesses were the architects of that inner journey. Central to their role was their relationship to cycles of the moon, the earth, the body, and the soul. Just as the moon disappears into darkness before returning to light, the soul must descend into shadow before rebirth. The feminine understood this intimately. While male initiates often pursued mastery through asceticism or battle, women embodied spiritual wisdom through receptivity, intuition, and sacred embodiment. They taught that to know the divine, one must learn to receive, to become an empty chalice through which spirit could pour itself. In fact, the chalice, or grail, became one of the most enduring symbols of hidden feminine power. It represented not only the womb, but the vessel of divine revelation. Priestesses were trained to enter trance states through rhythmic movement, sound, incense, fasting, and sometimes entheogenic plants. In these altered states, they would channel oracles, commune with archetypal deities, and access interdimensional knowledge. Today, we might call this mediumship or psychic ability. In those times, it was simply the way. But these gifts weren't granted freely. Each priestess underwent years, sometimes decades of preparation. She learned the science of the breath, the alchemy of herbs, the decoding of dreams, the patterns of the stars. She studied the geometry of temples, the meanings behind sacred chants, and how to hold the liminal space between the seen and unseen. They were not witches, as later demonized. They were spiritual engineers, operating temples as psycho-spiritual laboratories designed to guide initiates through inner transfiguration. And they held something else too, something even more threatening to patriarchal structures: the authority to initiate. To initiate someone was not merely to teach it, it was to unlock a new level of being. The priestesses held the power to lead others across thresholds, from unconsciousness to awareness, from fragmentation to wholeness. In many ancient systems, especially within the Eleusinian mysteries and Egyptian temples, this authority was exclusive to the feminine, not because of biological gender, but because of the feminine archetype's ability to hold and transmit mystery. The feminine was seen as the container of life and death, the womb and the tomb, the shaper of souls in unseen dimensions. It wasn't that men couldn't access these mysteries. It was that the mysteries themselves flowed through feminine archetypal channels. In this way, a well-trained priestess functioned not as a gatekeeper, but as a cosmic midwife, assisting in the spiritual birth of the initiate. One of the most sacred roles women held was that of the Veiled One, title given to those who had passed through the deepest initiations and emerged with the inner eye fully open. These women rarely spoke openly. They taught through symbol, paradox, silence, and presence. The veil they wore was both literal and metaphysical. It concealed their identity, but it also signified the great esoteric truth that what is most sacred is not meant to be exposed, but unveiled within. This tradition of veiling and unveiling also found expression in the goddess cults of Isis, Inanna, and Hecate, where the seeker had to earn access to higher mysteries through purification, devotion, and humility. At each stage of the journey, a priestess would appear not as a teacher, but as a mirror, reflecting back the initiate's own hidden depths. But as patriarchal empires consolidated power, the spiritual sovereignty of the feminine was systematically dismantled. The sacred rites were outlawed. The temples were repurposed or destroyed. The priestesses once revered as embodiments of divine intelligence were recast as threats, seductresses, witches, and madwomen. And yet, something survived, encoded in myths, hidden in symbols, whispers in dreams. The legacy of the priestesses remains, quietly calling to those with ears to hear. The ancient priestesses may be gone, but their wisdom is not lost. Their teachings were never meant to remain locked in stone temples. They were designed to be remembered soul to soul. To begin reconnecting with this lineage, you don't need a robe or a ritual chamber. You need stillness, intention, and the courage to descend inward. One of the most powerful practices inspired by the mystery schools is the sacred inner veil meditation, a modern adaptation of an ancient rite. Step 1. Begin by sitting quietly in darkness or candlelight. Close your eyes and visualize a shimmering veil before you. This veil represents the boundary between your conscious mind and your inner temple. Step 2. Slowly, with your breath, begin to lift the veil in your mind's eye. As you do, ask silently, "What within me seeks to be revealed?" Step 3. Wait. Do not force insight. The feminine path is not about control, it's about receiving. Let images, feelings, or symbols arise naturally. Trust them. Step 4. Record what you receive. Even a single word or color holds energy. To deepen the practice, align with the moon cycles. The new moon is a time for descent, mystery, and uncovering hidden truths. The full moon brings illumination, vision, and embodiment. Over time, you may notice an increased sensitivity to dreams, synchronicities, and intuitive nudges. These are signs of awakening remembrance, the very essence of what the priestesses once cultivated. And remember, to walk this path is not to follow old dogma. It is to rekindle a forgotten flame, one that still burns quietly in the hidden chambers of the soul. The priestesses may have been silenced, their temples reduced to ruins, but their wisdom has never died. It simply went underground, waiting for a time such as this. In rediscovering their story, we do not merely learn history, we remember ourselves. We remember that the divine feminine is not a relic, but a force still moving through our dreams, our instincts, our inner knowing. And though we may never walk the marble corridors of ancient mystery schools, their sacred architecture still lives within the breath, the body, and the quiet moments between thoughts. If this touched something ancient in you, do not ignore it. Reflect, journal, sit with the veil. The path is not paved with answers, but with presence. And if this video resonated, share it. Not for algorithms, but for the possibility that someone somewhere is waiting to remember too. The priestesses are not lost. They are awakening in you,